Part 1. The Distance That Grew. It started when we were kids. I was the quiet, bookish type, always with a journal or a novel in hand. My brother was loud, energetic, always outside, always in trouble. Our parents did their best, I think. But somehow, they unintentionally pushed us apart. I was the good child. Straight A's, responsible, helpful. He was the problem child. The one who needed extra attention. So while they were busy chasing after his chaos, I was left to manage myself. And I did. Or at least, I thought I did. I remember once, I was maybe 12 and he was 8. I had just won a school competition, and our parents missed the award ceremony because he got into a fight at school that same day. That was the first time I remember feeling real resentment. Not just disappointment, resentment. It festered quietly over the years. Part 2. Teen years, growing apart. By the time we were teenagers, we barely spoke. He was into partying, drinking, and hanging with the kind of crowd that scared me. I kept to myself, diving deeper into school and avoiding conflict at all costs. Sometimes he would come home drunk, stumbling into the house in the middle of the night. I'd hear our parents arguing with him, the slamming doors, the angry silence that followed. And I'd just lie there in bed, pretending to be asleep. I told myself it wasn't my problem. But there were moments, small ones, that cracked the wall between us. Like the time I found him crying alone in the backyard after a breakup. Or the night he walked me home from a late shift, even though he didn't say a word the entire time. I never acknowledged them, never said thank you. But I remember them. Part 3. The Big Blow-Up. The real breaking point came during my last year of college. I had come home for spring break. He was 20 then, and had dropped out of community college. Still living at home, still clashing with everyone. One night, I found out he had taken my laptop, the one I used for school, and pawned it. Without asking. To buy whatever. Weed, booze, who knows. I lost it. I screamed at him like I never had before. Called him selfish, a loser, a burden on our family. I said things I can't take back. He just stood there, stone-faced, and took it all in. Then he said, "I didn't want to be your problem. You never saw me as your brother anyway." He moved out 2 days later. We didn't speak for 3 years. Part 4. The night everything changed. This part is hard. Earlier this year, I got a call from our mom. My brother had been in a car accident. Nothing fatal, but bad enough to land him in the hospital for a week. I didn't want to go. But I did. I sat in that sterile room for 45 minutes before he woke up. When he did, he looked at me and said, "You came?" Like he didn't expect me to. We talked. Really talked. For the first time in years. He told me he'd been trying to get clean. That he'd relapsed. That he hated who he had become, but didn't know how to fix it. He cried. I cried. We held hands like we were kids again. Since then, things have been different. Part 5. Rebuilding. It's been 6 months. He's in a recovery program. I visit once a week. We text. Sometimes we joke about how we were roommates with trauma growing up. I won't pretend everything is perfect. It's not. There's still hurt. Still memories I wish I could erase. But for the first time in my life, I feel like I have a brother. A real one. Sometimes, healing doesn't come in a big moment. Sometimes it sneaks up on you. In a hospital room, in a quiet apology, in an unexpected laugh over coffee. And if you're reading this, and you've got someone you've given up on, maybe give them one more chance. Part 6. The first real conversation. A week after he got out of the hospital, we met up at a small coffee shop downtown. I was nervous. He looked different. Tired, thinner, but also more present. We sat in silence for a while, and then he said, "Do you ever think things could have been different? If we actually liked each other?" I laughed. It wasn't funny, but it was real. That conversation went on for hours. We talked about everything: our childhood, our parents, what it was like to grow up in the same house yet feel completely alone. He told me how isolated he always felt. I told him how invisible I felt too. It turned out we weren't enemies. Just two lonely kids fighting their own battles with no one to talk to. Part 7. Family Dynamics. Talking with him opened a lot of old wounds, especially about our parents. We realized how much damage was caused by the way they raised us. Not out of malice, but imbalance. They protected him from the world and expected me to protect myself. We weren't mad at them. Just aware now. Our family never talked about emotions. Never apologized. Never healed. One night, we sat down with our parents and had the most awkward conversation in history. My mom cried. My dad stayed quiet for most of it. But something shifted. There was acknowledgement. And that's where healing begins. Part 8. The Relapse. Just when things started getting better, he relapsed. He didn't tell me. I found out when I saw him on the street one evening, eyes glassy, stumbling, smelling like vodka. He looked right through me like I wasn't even there. I didn't yell. I didn't scold. I just took him home. The next morning, I made him breakfast and said, "You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be honest." He cried again. He said he was afraid I'd walk away if I saw who he really was. I told him, "I already did once. I'm not doing it again." Part 9. Rebuilding Trust Again. This time, he checked himself into a better program. One that included therapy and family sessions. We started going to those sessions together. Sometimes we'd leave more exhausted than when we went in. Sometimes we laughed. Sometimes we sat in silence the whole ride home. But we kept showing up. That's what mattered. I started to see him not as a broken brother I needed to forgive, but as a full human. Flawed. Fighting. Growing. And maybe that's how he saw me too. Part 10. A letter he never sent. One night, while helping him clean his apartment, I found a letter in a drawer. Unsent. Unfinished. Dated 2 years ago. It started with, "To my sister, I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, but I wanted to try to explain." I never told him I found it. But I kept it. Every time I doubt this fragile bond we're rebuilding, I read that letter and remind myself. He always wanted to be better. He just didn't know how. Part 11. Therapy Alone. I started going to therapy on my own. I thought I was doing fine. But talking to someone made me realize how much bitterness I had buried. How I had spent years being the strong one, and never let myself feel safe or soft. My therapist told me, "You spent your whole life being a sister to someone who couldn't be a brother. Now that he's trying, are you willing to try too?" It hit me hard. Healing isn't just about forgiving others. Sometimes, it's about letting yourself come home too. Part 12. Our first real laugh. It sounds silly, but the first time we really laughed together, like truly laughed, was over something dumb. He mispronounced quinoa while trying to cook it for dinner. I corrected him and he said, "Oh, whatever. I grew up on Hot Pockets, not hipster rice." We both burst out laughing and couldn't stop. Tears in the eyes type of laugh. That moment felt bigger than therapy. Laughter is proof that maybe, just maybe, joy is possible after pain. Part 13. His first speech. A few months later, he was asked to speak at a recovery event. He almost bailed from anxiety. He asked me to come. I sat in the front row. He walked up to the mic, shaking, and said, Hi, I'm Jake, and I'm an addict. And this is the first time in my life I don't feel ashamed saying that. He shared his story. He didn't sugarcoat it. He talked about me. About how someone didn't give up on him when he had already given up on himself. I've never been prouder in my life. Part 14. A birthday that meant something. For my 29th birthday, he showed up early with homemade cupcakes. He had never remembered my birthday before. Ever. He looked me in the eye and said, "Thank you for not giving up on me. I'm not there yet, but I'm trying. For you. For me. For all the birthdays I missed." I hugged him so tight, I thought I'd crush him. It wasn't about the cupcakes. It was about the intention, the effort, the growth. Part 15. Full circle. Last week, we visited our childhood home together. Just the two of us. We stood in the backyard, where we used to ignore each other. And he said, "If I could go back, I'd sit beside you. I'd ask what book you're reading. I'd be a better brother. But maybe this, right now, is enough." I didn't say anything. I just nodded. And for the first time in decades, I felt like we were safe together. Not perfect, but safe. And maybe that's the real ending.